Guys, I'm really stoked to have you here. Part of connecting things, we've been thinking a little bit about what is connecting things, what is the genre of connecting things, and we're kind of just coming to the conclusion that it's anybody doing anything cool. And it's as broad as that is. We tend to have a lot of people who do entrepreneurship, people who do design, people who do photography, people who just speak. And today we got ourselves a unicorn, I think. We got a spoken word poet and musician. I've had a chance to just talk to this guy a little bit, and his work is really, really rad, and we're just so stoked to have him. His name's Micah. He's born and raised in Long Beach. He does this for a living. This is his thing, and we're just so pumped to have him come and talk to us. So please engage with it. That's the most important thing. We want to make sure that our speakers feel welcome. Listen to him. If it makes you want to cry, cry. It makes you want to laugh. It makes you want to sing along and clap, do that too. We're just so pumped to have him. Micah, why don't you make your way up here? Micah Bournes, everybody.
Okay. I was talking to Jenna, and I don't think anyone should ever listen to spoken word at 8 in the morning, but personally, but y'all invited me, so this is your fault. So I'm gonna start off with a couple poems, and then I'll get into the talk. But just by way of warning, it can get a little intense. So sometimes I wish I would have drowned right there in that bathtub where my real mom abandoned me. The only reason I haven't killed myself already is because I'm afraid. It was the first time I heard someone express a desire to commit suicide, and I actually believed them. This was no flippant threat. More than melodramatic selfishness, he was stone-faced serious and fearful. Not afraid of dying, afraid it might not work. Like the last time he tried, when he was a boy, youthful and full of life. He found his uncle's long neck shotgun, but the distance from the trigger to the mouth of the barrel was greater than the 14 years of arm stretched from his temple to his fingertips. So he stood the gun up for a last dance, held it tight against his chest, and pulled the trigger with his toe, but blew a hole through the roof instead of his head. When that happened, I got scared. I could have shot half my face off. That would suck to live with half a face, you know? I didn't know. I didn't know what to do or say. But I figured the worst thing I could do is say too much, so I spoke slowly, choosing my words not wisely, but at least precisely. And I even thought about calling a hotline or something, but this was my friend. Why would I put his life in the hands of a stranger? But what makes me think that I can save him? But I gotta try to save him. And suddenly I find myself speaking as quickly as my heart is beating. And I don't even know what I'm saying, but it's something along the lines of, I love you, in the manliest way possible. But if I wanted to kill myself, knowing my homeboy loved me wouldn't be enough incentive to stay alive. So I reminded him that God loved him too, hoping the affection of his almighty creator might hold more significance than mine. And he'd been through some hard times, and I wasn't trying to minimize his pain, but he needed to know that he isn't the only one. So I said, bro, don't give up. My life sucks too, and I love it. And I suck too, and I'm awesome. And 15 minutes later, my mouth is still moving, and I'm praying God would strike me mute because I tried to shut up, but my tongue won't let me. And apparently, I had a whole lot to say for someone who didn't know what to say. And I don't even know if I'm trying to save him or myself, because if he puts a bullet through his head anytime soon, I will feel completely responsible, and his blood cannot be on my hands. You cannot kill yourself. Friend, please. I'm so glad you're alive. When I first started writing creatively, I started off with hip hop, moved into spoken word poetry, and then now I'm doing a little bit of blues as well. But I started writing in college, and my college looked a lot like this. I was a severe minority, and I joined a poetry club on campus, and I was the only person in the club who wasn't white. And it was dope. Like we would meet every week, and the only rule was you had to bring a new poem each week. And so this group of people became my tightest group of friends. But as we started hanging out, even outside of the club meetings, and get to know each other better and better, people would do things and say things that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. And so I didn't know how to address it because it was an awkward conversation. So I did what brought us all together in the first place, and I wrote a poem about it. So this poem is titled, I Love Y'all, for real. I love y'all, for real. But sometimes you make me feel dumb. Like the last time we met and she read her piece of poetry and everybody was impressed except me. I wasn't hating. I just didn't comprehend it. But I pretended like I did because I didn't want to seem slow. You know, being the only. Or like when my phone rings and it's somebody black and y'all laugh because my dialect is just so darn cute or hilarious or whatever you think it is. Hey, let me call you back, kid. Excuse me, miss, but Sambo wanna know what be so minstrel show humorous. If anything, you should be amused by the way I talk to you. But still, like I said, I love y'all for real. But sometimes you make me feel dumb. So in my poetry, I front like my vocabulary is enormous. The thesaurus is my best friend, and half the time, I forget what words mean after I use them, but I gotta keep up with the Joneses, my fellow poets, my friends. Your intelligence extends far beyond the fields of my cotton ball brain. See, sometimes I'm ashamed because I'm black and I ain't as brainiac as y'all. Or I have not been blessed with the same level of intellect as the rest of you. Furthermore, due to my ethnicity, I feel the pressure to prove that I'm equally proficient at poetic composition. And I'm not accusing you of prejudice, however, such beliefs are often held subconsciously. Therefore, I seek to write so eloquently that all forms of bigotry, open and unknown, are blown to hell. But I know I never will. And that kills me. Because I love y'all. For real. But sometimes you make me feel dumb. So I want to talk about ambition. And as an independent artist, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've had to fight my unreasonable disdain for the mainstream. And but if you're anything like me, I don't think my disdain for mainstream things is completely unreasonable. It's not just that I'm too cool for school and don't like anything that's popular. I'm not just a hater. I'm not just a jealous person who doesn't like seeing other people succeed. I'm just really into my craft. And when I see mediocre expressions have incredible success, it's confusing, it's frustrating, it's angering, and it hurts my feelings. It's like, it feels personal. Like, why are they having success when they suck, right? Like I pour so much of myself into what I do, and like, you know, and so it's just confusing. And then when I see excellent expressions of it get paid no attention, you know, like if I say Anis Mojgani or Buddy Wakefield, like most people just no clue. Like they draw a blank. And these dudes are legends of spoken word poetry. I love them. But if you look them up, you look up their videos on YouTube and stuff, they have, you know, 5,000, 10,000, made it popular ones will have 20,000 views. But then there's these other poets who will remain unnamed, but there's two people in particular. And like every time they put out anything, it's like 50,000, 100,000, sometimes 1 million views of just garbage poetry, just garbage. And I don't understand it. Every spoken word poet that I know and respect, when they see those particular poets, we're all just like, what is going on, right? Like, it's not good, and I'm angry at the masses for liking it. You people have terrible taste in poetry, right? Like, I'm always thinking that about the world. But here lies the tension. As much as I would never want to create art like they create, I do want to have millions of views, right? I want to have the success they're having. So on one hand, I want to challenge. I want to push the boundaries. I want my work to be avant-garde. I want to be highly respected among the connoisseurs of my art form, but at the same time, I want to be wildly popular. I want to have mainstream success. I want to be a household name. I want validation from the very people I swear have terrible taste in art. Right? So it's like, you guys don't even know what's good, but please like me because I'm good. And if you like me, it's not because you have terrible taste, it's because you finally figured it out. You know what I'm saying? So it's that tension. And those two things, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. All right. It is possible to have avant-garde kind of progressive art that is also embraced by the mainstream. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive. However, as the creator, you can only achieve both of those by accident. You cannot intentionally craft something to be avant-garde and mainstream at the same time. You choose one or the other because by its very definition, avant-garde is new, experimental, and unusual. It's not tried and true. You're not just doing what you know people like. You're being creative and you're taking risks. So if you're taking risks in your creative process, it's less likely that the mainstream is going to embrace it right away or ever. Every now and then, the people may rise to the occasion and applaud work that's progressive or revolutionary. But for the most part, pioneers are underappreciated often. They're often considered before their time because people like what they know. They like what's comfortable and familiar. But why? Like, shouldn't people just like what's good? Shouldn't they be able to recognize what's really good versus this mediocre or not good stuff at all that they like? And see, from my perspective, I'm being objective. Like, I don't feel like I'm being biased. I'm really like, this is so obviously better than the things that you guys are liking. So this is a tangent, but I have to mention it because I just want to give you an example. So I mentioned Anis Mojgani. He's one of my favorite poets, favorite writers. He has this poem called "Shake the Dust," and the poem is more or less it's just dedicated to anyone who feels like a social outcast for whatever reason. So like it starts like, this one is for the fat girls, and then he goes on, and this one is for the geeks who were bullied in high school and so. So naming people, and then he's saying, shake the dust, just keep going, don't worry. And he has this one line where he says, for the celibate pedophile who keeps on struggling, shake the dust. That one line of poetry destroyed me. Because if there's any people group that everyone is okay with hating, right, it is adults who experience sexual attraction towards children. Right? And in one line of poetry, imagine if you were that person, if you were plagued with that desire. Every time anyone talks about someone like you, the only thing you hear is condemnation and judgment and disgust. Ill, gross, nasty, you're terrible, whatever. And in one line of poetry, he was able to take still a very strong and firm stance on the right side of justice on the issue, but humanize someone. Say, hey, if you're an adult who experiences sexual attraction towards children and you're fighting it, thank you. I can't imagine how difficult that must be to the celibate pedophile who keeps on struggling. Shake the dust. We see your struggle. We are thankful that you're fighting. I'm like, that's brilliant, right? Like, this is not my opinion. Like, how do you stand for justice and extend grace in just one short half sentence like that? Like, whoa, right? So to me, I'm like, this is not just like me being snobby. Like, this is way better than the stupid, like, sing-songy elementary crap that's going viral, right? Why would people not like what is so obviously significantly better than the garbage they do like? Well, I think that way about poetry, but not so much with other things. So when it comes to chocolate, I personally would much rather have a Snickers bar or a Twix bar than some 90% cocoa, nasty, bitter, dark chocolate any day, right? Like, to me, it's objectively gross. It tastes like you chewed a pill you were supposed to swallow. You know what I'm saying? Like, this mug is nasty, right? And I'm like, give me the candy bar, right? Like, but the thing is, to the chocolate connoisseur, that's blasphemy, right? How could you like Hershey's better than this imported Belgian, Swiss, blah, 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 blah? Like, I don't care, right? Now, this is not a matter of me being ignorant. I genuinely just don't appreciate it. And yeah, you can say, well, whatever, you haven't developed the taste for finer things in chocolate world, whatever. But at the end of the day, I have no obligation to like fancy dark chocolate, right? And it is judgmental and it is unreasonable for chocolate enthusiasts to be upset with me because I prefer a Snicker bar over some 90% dark chocolate that tastes like chalk to me. And so your passion does not need to be everyone else's passion. People have a right to like what they like. And in reality, the mainstream is not your enemy. It could be your friend. So for example, with those two terrible poets I mentioned, as much as I hate to admit it, they're expanding the reach of the art form. If someone is introduced to spoken word poetry through one of those poems that went viral and got millions of views, if they're introduced to the art form and they like it and they start to pursue it, then it's far more likely that eventually that person might discover, interact, and appreciate my work because of these terrible poets that gave them a taste for spoken word, right? And so I'm not trying to be a hater anymore because I spent so much in the beginning like, I just don't get it. Like, people suck. Like, and why do other people like people who suck? But I'm like, you know what? They ain't got nothing to do with me. They're not hurting me. And I used to think about it like competition, like they were stealing something from me. But in reality, those two poets and poets like them, they're not my competition. They're not stealing any opportunity from me. It's not like if they didn't exist, if they didn't write poetry, that those millions of views would automatically just come to me. You know, that's not the case. They're not your competition. And at this point in history, with 7 billion people on planet Earth and with the accessibility of the internet, no matter the field, there's plenty of opportunity to go around. I was at a conference one time and I heard this artist named Derek Webb talk about how technology has changed the industry of the performing arts. And I'm sure other businesses as well. But he said before it was like a pyramid, right? So you had the majority of artists at the bottom and they created the starving artist stereotype, right? Just really unsuccessful, maybe talented, but just, and it goes up and up. There's a very quickly diminishing middle class. And then there is a pinnacle of, you know, the wildly successful artists who were millionaires and billionaires. And everyone at the bottom just wanted to get at the top. You know, so if you were a musician, it's like you were either struggling local musician and there was no way to make it unless you got signed to a major label and suddenly they put you on TV and put you on tour. But now, he says things have changed because I don't need to be signed to a major label. I can upload my stuff to YouTube and people all over the world can watch it. I can, put my album on iTunes and people all over the world can buy it. And so Derek Webb was saying it changed from this pyramid to more of a diamond shape, where there is a booming middle class artist, right? So you still have some starving artists at the bottom, but it actually is far more attainable to become a mid-range, successful artist. And he said something that completely changed my perspective. So he's explaining this. He's like, if you use the tools that we have available, you can become a mid-range artist. And then he said, in this context, being an artist is now a blue-collar job. And when he said that, I felt so much peace. Because for so long, I was fighting this stereotype of being a hippy-dippy, dream-chasing poet. You know, to this day, my mother is still saying, when are you going to get a real job? You know what I mean? But when I think about the amount of hours I put into what I do, and when I think about the moderate amount of money I make, I'm absolutely a middle-class, blue-collar American. And for me, that is something to be incredibly proud of. Because honestly, at least for me, either way, I'll probably be middle class. So I can be middle-class American doing something I don't care about at all, or I can be a middle-class American pouring my blood, sweat, and tears into my creativity and my art form, you know? And that's meaningful to me. So at the end of the day, instead of like looking and competing and comparing and all this stuff, I had to sit back and I had to ask myself, what does success mean to me? I mean, you know, that's not a revolutionary thought. I'm a very, very ambitious person, but ambitious people tend to be insatiable. Ambition doesn't accomplish something and then be like, sweet, I did it, cool, I'm good. No, like ambition accomplishes something and then immediately sets their sights on the next thing. Ambition is awesome, but if it's not balanced with contentment and with thankfulness, it will leave you miserable and never satisfied and never feeling like you're successful enough. Because no matter how much you accomplish, there's always more. There's always someone who's doing it even better than you. So as you're going about your business, what I've discovered is you have to recognize and celebrate those moments when you stop and say, this right here, this is why I do what I do. And those moments will keep you thankful. And then your ambition motivates you to keep doing what you already are doing instead of driving you towards the ever elusive next thing, which hopefully maybe will finally make you feel successful. And so for me, I just want to share, as we close, a couple things. And this is not to toot my own horn, but it's to illustrate, these are moments for me where I'm like, I made it. I'm already successful. So after I do a lot of shows and stuff, I'll often have people come up to me or send me messages maybe a couple days later. So the poem I opened up with, the first poem about suicide. After that poem, I remember performing it once, and this middle-aged woman, like maybe 40, 50, came up to me, and she says, when I was a girl, about 8 years old, I walked into the living room and I saw my father have a gun pointed to his head. And I had to talk my dad out of taking his life. I have never told anyone. You are the first human being I'm telling. And I didn't realize until I heard your poem that it has been haunting me my entire life. And I need to deal with that. And I need to get into counseling. Thank you for your poem. There's nothing else. You know, like, I only hope to continue what I'm already doing. When I hear that, I don't care if I have 5 views, 500 views, 5,000 views, 5 million views. It doesn't matter. I'm doing something that's incredibly fulfilling, and I'm thankful and I'm content. And yes, I'm ambitious, but I am not chasing something better than that. There's nothing better than that, right? And so another example, these were a couple emails I got. This dude came across my album and he says, holy hell, the intelligence, the love, the heart. Man, I needed you. My dad died and you have held my heart. I wanted to say thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. It means the world. Your heart is huge and it's infectious. Another person wrote, your poetry has been therapy for my soul. Your poem, Confident Uncertainty, is where I'm at with a 2-year-old and my divorce being finalized as of yesterday. I fought hard for my marriage. Your poem, As We, has made me cry for the last several days, reconciling the past with the future so I can be present. I don't want this to be flattery. I hope it's a gust of wind under your God-given wings, faith and poetry, mad respect and much love, brother. I'm not aiming for anything else. I'm already incredibly successful, you know, with my struggles, with my financial tight and all the stuff that I wish I could do, and I wish I had full funding for all my creative ideas. But when I look at that, I'm like, I made it, yo. And so for me, I would encourage you. It'll be different for you. Obviously, all y'all aren't spoken word poets, but try to recognize those moments and record them and remember them. And if you don't have those moments where you realize this is why I do what I do, I'm already fulfilled, then maybe you need to change professions, because life is too short to give the majority of your day to something that you never feel like you're doing it for a reason other than making money, right? And maybe not even changing professions, just change the way you go about it. Because for me, I've realized I can marry my passions. So when I graduated college, like poetry and art and music was one path, and then like justice work, I wanted to join the Peace Corps and all these things was another path. And I back then thought I had to choose one or the other, and I didn't. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if I would have only done poetry and never talked about social issues, I would have felt completely unfulfilled. If I would have only joined the Peace Corps and got involved in nonprofits and didn't express myself creatively, I would have felt completely unfulfilled. So it's like marrying your passions, because then you have your skill, but then also your heart coming together, and you have those moments more often. If you're not marrying all of, and not that is only two, but several things that you're good at, figure out how to bring them together and have those moments and have ambition, but don't let it be this dangling carrot, So time is running out, so I'm going to shut up. I think it's probably been 20 minutes. Question and answer. Yeah. This brother is a beast right here. Marcus Omari, thanks for coming out. I also have some friends. The Pawn Shop Kings came out. Scott and Joe, thanks for coming out, yo. Yeah. So, anyways, any questions about anything? Yes. I mean, especially if you're involved in any type of business or artistic thing, it's like it will help for sure. Because people love connecting with the story behind things. So it's like I love seeing good concerts and good artists, but honestly, as much as I love the music and the poetry, sometimes my favorite moments are when they just are like telling the stories behind where it came from. So I get to connect with it more. I see a cool business, but then when I hear the story of where it came from, and it's like, so yeah, I think you should definitely get comfortable at it. Obviously, not everyone's going to be a great skilled speaker, but do it enough to be able to, bring people in, because it'll create more connections, because then they're not just a fan of the product, but they support you and everything you're doing when you invite them into your life beyond just what you're producing. Yeah. Well, so this is the thing. YouTube has helped so much, because spoken word, it's just, it's so much of it is visual. So even when I do have recordings, I have CDs, and I try to put some music, whatever, but something's always lost a little bit. It's not quite the same. So I think, it's helped, because at least, even though it's not the same as seeing it live, at least you have the visual as well. And I don't know, somebody told me, just be everywhere that people are looking for you. So I hate Twitter, but I have a Twitter, because some people love Twitter, and so that's the only place. They won't follow me on Instagram, whatever. So I try to just be where all the major outlets are. My personal thing is I love Instagram. But that's not necessarily for business. That's more of I just like it. But yeah, I don't know. And that's the thing. I'm fighting, because I'm not great with technology. But I know for me, it's like when you Google my name, the first thing that pops up is my website. It's like very easy to find me, and it goes straight to me if you send a message through there. And so just being available, and also it's not hard to look a lot bigger than you are as far as professional wise. And so like people think that I have some huge operation going on, because my website looks mad professional and my business cards are slick and all these things. But it's like, I know enough creative friends that we're, helping each other out, and we all look like we doing it big, So yeah. Yeah. Her question was, when did I know that I could actually make a living off of it? When I didn't. You definitely don't. I didn't write my first spoken word poem until I was 20, my junior year of college. And My parents did not send me to college to become a spoken word poet, right? Like, that was not the thing. It was not the plan. And even though when I started doing it and loving it, I still thought like, there's a music industry. There's a spoken word community. There's not like a booming industry. Like, and very few people I know make a living doing exclusively spoken word. So, yeah, the reason I started to realize it was I wasn't trying, an opportunity was happening anyway. So I was just going to open mics for fun. I was just going to poetry slams and competing for fun. And when people would see me perform, they'd be like, "Hey, dude, like, how much do you charge?" I was like, "What? You want to pay me? Like $50 and free dinner. I'm good." You know what I'm saying? Like, but what ended up happening was I started getting not like a ton, but enough invitations where I thought to myself, if I'm getting this many invitations and I'm not even trying, like, what would happen if I actually put some effort into this? So I had a part-time job at the time, but then I hit up one of my roommates from college, like, "Dude, can you build me a website? I want to act like I know what I'm doing," right? And so there was a few videos from places I performed. So I built this website and I just had like 4 videos on it and a contact thing, and then I had business cards printed up and I started handing them out at open mics, and then it just kind of started coming. So, but yeah, it was other people. Really, I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for other people recognizing it in me and affirming. And so that's why whenever I find someone who's talented, I'm like, yo, I really try to be verbally affirming, because that gave me the confidence. Well, maybe this can be more than just a hobby, because all these people keep telling me, I should do this and wanting to pay me. So, yeah. Yes, sir. I used to have much longer hair, brother. I got a haircut. Yeah. 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 I think the spoken word might be a little different than other art forms because I perform a lot while I'm still writing the poem, because sometimes I'll write something and I won't realize how people will receive it. Like things that I didn't intend to be a joke, people will laugh at. Right. And so then once I realize that, then the next time I perform it, I'll ham it up because I'm like, oh, they're going to think it's funny. So now I'm going to deliver it like a joke, when before I just didn't understand how that was going to translate. But I don't know. For me, it's a lot of trial and error. The creative process for me, if I could give you one resource, it is the book called Art and Fear by Ted Orland and David Bales. It is like my creative Bible. But the premise of the whole book is most of what you do will suck. And it was so liberating for me. It was so freeing for me. Because he says, the artist needs to understand that the purpose of the vast majority of your work is simply to show you how to create the small portion of it that will succeed, and that will be excellent. And so he tells this story. There's two stories that really were impactful to me. And the first one, he talks about a ceramics teacher. And he said the ceramics teacher divided his class down the middle. And he said half the class will be graded on quality and the other half will be graded on quantity. And he said the quantity side, they had to create 40 pounds of pots for an A, 30 pounds for a B, and so on. The quality side only had to create 1 pot, but it had to be nearly perfect for them to get an A. So then he says, fast forward to the end of the semester, all of the best pots came from the quantity side, because he says they were creating and they weren't worried about it being perfect, and they were getting better in the process. So their first few were terrible, but then they got better and better and better. It says, while the quality side sat around theorizing about perfection and having nothing more to show for it than grandiose ideas and a pile of dead clay. And then he tells another story, observation. He says, you always hear about the child genius. You always hear about, the 12-year-old who graduated from college and the 7-year-old who can play like Beethoven or paint like Monet or all these things. And he goes, but rarely does the 12-year-old genius actually grow up to become the next Einstein. Rarely does the 12-year-old prodigy grow up to become the next Yo-Yo Ma or Shakespeare or whatever. Why is that? He says, well, because in the end, discipline is nearly indistinguishable from giftedness. Giftedness alone isn't work. And I think a lot of people write themselves off because they say, I'm good, but I'm not good enough. I'm just not gifted. Other people just got it, But when I really look at the artists that I think are amazing, they were not always amazing. I love Kendrick Lamar, but this dude popped when he was around 25, got really big, But he'd been making music since he was 15, and it was not good. It was like you listen to some of his early stuff, and it wasn't terrible, but it was like it wasn't the Kendrick Lamar that we're all like, man, best rapper ever. It was like a 15-year-old kid trying to rap. But he created, and he never stopped. So by the time he was 25, he has a decade of work under his belt. And I think a lot of people launch businesses or say, oh, I want to be full-time with my art. And they're thinking, I'm going to work really hard for a year or 2 or 3 and then make it. When it's like, nah, you need to be thinking in decades. You know what I'm saying? And again, so many of the artists that I know and respect, they're 8, 9, 10 years into it, and they're moderately successful, but I deeply appreciate their work, and they're way better than when they started, because they were unafraid to create, and they kept grinding, and when their album didn't blow up, they still made another one, and when that one didn't blow up, they made a third, And so, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, And it's just like there's no guarantee. And when I think about it, I'm like artists that I know and love and think are amazing and way better than me, people have no clue who they are. You know what I'm saying? And then other artists who are successful that I'll get an album of someone that I think is amazing and still I only like 5 songs out of 12 or 13. So I'm like, wait a minute. Like people that I think are amazing, I skip half of their songs. And yet for myself, I expect to make an album of all hits. Every single last one of them is going to blow people's minds, And so it's just like, I don't know. I just want to free myself to realize it's about the creative process and not being afraid to fail and taking risk. But at the end of the day, nothing is a guarantee. No matter how hard you work, no matter how talented you are, some people will never have wild mainstream success, but that doesn't mean it's not worth creating, because when you recognize why you're doing what you're doing, and when you see who you are affecting, then you'll be encouraged by that instead of being worried about all the people who aren't listening to you. Like recognize the influence that God has given you and be thankful for that and do something important with it, So. Yeah. At the table, I have some business cards and also an email list if you want to know when I come out with stuff. So I do have an album there, but my latest album is actually called Alive and Ill. It's spoken word. I ran out of physical copies at the moment, but on my website and on iTunes, you can get it. But all of my work is available for free download as well. I want to make it accessible. I want people to be able to have it no matter what situation you're in. So grab a card if you want to know when I release new material. I'm working on a blues album as well. But yeah, so you can buy a physical copy of my older album, The Man Without a Name, and you can get online and you can download Alive and Ill. So that's my favorite because it's the most recent. Thanks.
Yeah, right.